Chalk Talk is brought to you by Isolite, the emergency lighting experts. Stay educated, my friends.
I think Summer Breeze and some Jimmy Buffett's a pretty good intro for a mid-summer chalk talk, but I do think it's a missed opportunity to not be doing Olympic theme music here, especially since the US is doing so well right now. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our July Chalk Talk. Thank you all for joining me on a strange day. This has been a strange scheduling month. We'll resume our normal schedule in August, but while you're here today, we're going to be talking about really spec grade, architectural grade products. We have, a pretty full product line of life safety emergency lighting products, and a lot of times the distinctions between the products and product lines are pretty obvious, but sometimes they're not. And very often we describe something as, oh, this is a spec grade product, an architectural grade product. But I really wanted to spend some time to discuss what that actually meant. So in order to do that, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what products we are defining as spec grade. We're not going to do the exhaustive list, but we'll give you some context as to the types of products we're talking about. We'll give you a contrast for what is not a spec grade product, what is a contractor grade or value grade type product. So we'll throw those up there. It will be very notable in their absence, the inverters, and so I wanted to touch on them. I think it's worth just dipping our toes in that water to describe how they fit in this categorization. And after we sort of define the products that are in scope for today, I want to get into the specifics about the elements that make them specification grade: the design, the colors, the materials and finishes, the performance, the flexibility, all of those things that really set them apart from more standard sort of contractor grade products. We'll go into some details there. I want to end with a concrete example comparing our ELT2 to our EUG. Both of those are edge lit exit signs. They may sort of they feel similar, but they're definitely in two different categories, and I want to explain why that's the case. And then, as always, we'll end with some additional information about some sales tools we've made available to you, and we'll throw our contact information up there and make sure that you know how to get in touch with us. As always, this is a chalk talk, so you guys are all muted. If you have questions, put them in the chat, throw them in the Q&A. We'll make sure that all those questions are answered before we leave the chat. So I think the most helpful way to start here is just to get some context about what types of products we consider specification grade. And this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but these are the types of things that we're talking about. These are the ELTs, the thin lines, the concealed emergency lights, the somewhat newly released Air. These are the sleek, sexy, blend-in, design-focused, high-technology products in our product line. They're sort of doing a lot of heavy lifting, and we'll describe what specifically differentiates them. But if we flip our coin over and we talk about what's on the other end of the spectrum, we see things that are more contractor grade or more value grade. And this slide isn't intended to be sad music, womp, 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 look at these poor products here. Everything that we make in our product line, we take very seriously, and I would put our product line up against anybody else in the industry. But these have a place where there's no points for style. They're not in design critical applications. The needs are maybe a little bit more basic. Think about like pizza shops, delis, dentist's office. There's not a lot of points for style. We're just trying to get to yes. Yeah, we have our exit signs. Yeah, we have our emergency lights. We're good to go. So that's kind of the two tiers of product that we're here to discuss today. And obviously, we've not mentioned inverters yet. Now, I said when we were talking about those spec grade products that they're super sleek and they blend in. And I think inverters actually represent the pinnacle of that. If we think that the goal is to make all of this stuff disappear as much as humanly possible, there's no better way to do that than with an inverter. Utilizing the existing lights that are in the space for emergency purposes means that there has to be nothing on the wall, and that's great. Even more than just the visible aspect of it, you actually get to pick up the feature set of those standard lights. So if it's a wet location or hazardous location, or if you're trying to use decorative lights for your emergency purposes, you get to do that with an inverter. But that's not really the only thing we have to worry about. That's all well and good, but somewhere in this job, there's going to have to be an exit sign. And exit signs are fundamentally different, right? Their goal cannot be to totally blend into their surroundings. They're they're egress marking, right? They're there so that people can find their way out of buildings in an emergency. They have to stand out in some way, shape, or form. They have to have contrast with their background. And so it still bears worth discussion that they have to be different. There is a difference between spec grade and these value grade. And so if we get into the details of what those distinctions are, we can kind of start to paint this picture. Now, one of the things I was contemplating when I put these slides together is I was just going to list specification grade and contractor grade. And I think that would start to tell this story. But I decided that I was going to add a third tier here, not because this is a word that we use very commonly in our lexicon. Like, you're not going to hear me in a next Chalk Talk say this is kind of a commercial grade product. But what I want to relay to you is that this is a spectrum, right? It's not a coin with two sides. It's either spec grade or contractor grade. It's a spectrum. It's shades of gray. There's no line in the sand where on the left of it you're one and on the right side of it you're the other. Some things are more spec grade than others. Some things are less spec grade. Specification grade products to us are, much higher performing. They have more technology in them. They have higher quality materials or, better surface treatments. Precise engineering doesn't necessarily just mean the stuff that we do here when we're designing these products, but also the manufacturing of them. Oftentimes they'll require secondary processes, machining, texturing, powder coating, painting, to get the look and feel to where we want it. And then the other key characteristic of spec grade products is they tend to have high degrees of customization. And so they can be made to go into a wide variety of applications, and they can be, suited to fit the needs of different kinds of customers. Contractor grade is really the exact opposite of it, right? It's inexpensive. If you buy 20 instead of 19, it doesn't really matter. You haven't spent that much money on them. It's okay. They can be made to work in basically any standard application. They're really like the lowest common denominator type product. And what that really means is that the focus is on reducing the cost of the device versus, adding to the appearance or the technology of it. There's, definitely good enough to move on when you're talking about these contractor grade products. And so they get flexibility by being basic, whereas spec grade products get flexibility by allowing for customization. And as I said, commercial grade is kind of that valley in the middle. If you think about, like industrial products that have a lot of options and they can be made to be worked into a lot of different types of installations, but they're not design focused, that's kind of a commercial grade product, right? It's somewhere in between these two different extremes. If we want to dig in a little bit more, I think the first and probably more abstract concept here is the design of it, right? I think that it's important that a spec grade product look good. It needs to be well designed. And I get that that's subjective, but I tried to put a couple different things down here that are a little bit more tangible. The first and foremost is fit and finish, right? There's no gaps in the product construction. We make sure that things match together in terms of either their texture or their brushing. And so the ELT2 that you see over there on the right side, that's actually comprised of several different parts, right? The thing that holds that legend is a part, the main housing is a part, the gooseneck and canopy combination is actually 3 parts, but you can't see the seams and you don't even notice it when you have the brushing. The reason for that is that we go the extra step to basically have all of the the mounting and construction hardware concealed. That takes secondary machining operations inside of the product. And then when we do the brushing or the powder coating, we actually do that as one step. So it gets brushed together such that the brushing actually matches. It makes it look like one unified piece there instead of multiple pieces that just got haphazardly bolted together. Even more than that, though, just how we treat the edges of this, right? You're not going to see big bulbous edges on specification grade products. They're going to have sharp edges, small radii, just that's pretty common across the industry when they talk about architectural products. It means sharp edged or at least small radius edged. And then the other piece to the puzzle is we're trying to make it as small as humanly possible. If we have to move to multiple boards that are kind of constructed in such a way that we can make the enclosure a little bit smaller, we'll do that for a specification grade product because they're designed to be discrete, they're designed to blend in. That's why the concealed emergency lights are in this. They kind of just disappear into the wall. The edge lit exit signs generally are a part of this category because you can sort of see through them and they highlight the design of the space, not the design of the sign so much. But even after that, colors, materials, and finishes are pretty important. Colors, we're going to have a lot more options. We're going to have black, white, but brushed aluminum, painted brass, powder coating, and we'll also offer customization in spec grade products. So if you want that ELT in a like a Barney purple or like a bright orange, we can certainly do that. We could do that via powder coating or through wet paint, whatever the requirement is for the customer. So a lot more color variation is available. Materials, they tend to be a higher quality materials. We will do die cast aluminum as compared to like an extruded aluminum. We'll use a higher quality acrylic in the edge lit, but even the plastic products are going to be a little bit different. We'll use higher quality, more UV stable resins. We'll add more texture into the finishing of the product, which actually may seem like it shouldn't add to cost or complexity, but it actually does. The more textured a piece of plastic is, the harder it is to remove from molds, which means that the cost of the product goes up a little bit. But finishes are important even in plastic. When we go to those die cast products, we're going to add brushing, high uniformity powder coating, a lot of UV stability if we're going to be doing that powder coating. It's just the quality is a lot higher. The key though is it's not just a pretty face, right? I think, it's easier to make just a good looking product, but you have to back it with the technology. And the spec grade products also have higher performance characteristics about them. There's a lot of different ways that we distinguish them from the design of the electronics, but some simple things are the exit signs in the spec grade line, they tend to have longer standard run times, like 3 or 4 hours is pretty common. They're brighter than what's required by code. We get to that by using more advanced battery chemistries that we end up using lithium iron phosphate or nickel metal hydride instead of just a very simple lead calcium or a simple NiCad in those cases. The other major thing that's different from the design is the optics of the emergency lights. If you think about comparing something like our air versus our bug, if you were to look at the lumen output of those two emergency lights, they're at least close, right? They're relatively similar, but the air is significantly higher performing. The reason for that is the optics. Whereas contractor grade products tend to use standard off-the-shelf optics that might get used in street lights, headlights for cars, or other sort of standard applications. That really means that they're trying to basically put light out in a very broad way. But emergency lighting is fundamentally different. We really care about lighting up this 6-foot wide path of egress for very long distances so that we can increase the spacing. And that's really what we do in our architectural spec grade products. We custom design the optics and we spend a lot of money and time doing it, so that the beam angle that comes out of those fixtures is very much optimized for emergency lighting use cases. That means that you can actually use less of them in the job because they're more purpose built. And you don't really have to take our word for it. We actually back most of our spec grade products with longer standard warranties. And you'll also see that we have options to extend those warranties on the electronics out to 10 years and beyond. So we put our money where our mouth is from that perspective. We also know that, products that are going to call for specified emergency lights and exit signs, they often have sort of weird engineering proclivities all over the place. And so customization and flexibility is something else that we try to add into these spec grade products as much as is humanly possible. And so, it's simple stuff like SD is always available, or in a lot of cases, it's actually standard. We'll also offer integration with other building systems through fire alarm interfaces or BMS interfaces. Custom wording is available. So in addition to just saying exit, you can make those signs also be just standard signage, MRI in use, recording in use, do not exit, really anything that the customer requires. And then it's just sort of high degrees of integration with all of the other systems. In addition to that, we also tend to account for, let's just call it, more abnormal mounting scenarios. So simple stuff like mullions and stanchions to, weird roof and ceiling angles, thicker drywall on the ceiling, all of those weird scenarios that show up in buildings, the spec grade products tend to account for a lot more than like a contractor grade product can. And so I think how we should end here is a very specific example of something in our product line that seems similar but has a lot of differences under the hood. And that's our ELT2 versus the EUG. They're both edge-lit exit signs. And so they both kind of fit in the same applications, but there's a lot of difference between these two. Now, first and foremost, I think they just look very different. I think the ELT2, with its die-cast construction, its brushing, looks significantly better than the extruded aluminum construction of the EUG. There's a cost difference between those two types of technologies, but the ELT2 ends up looking a lot better. That extends down into the acrylic edge-lit panel as well. The ELT2 uses a molded and polished panel, which gives it very high optical clarity, whereas the EUG still looks pretty good, but it's a CNC cut out of a sheet, and then the edges are sanded and cut into that shape. And so you lose some clarity. It doesn't look quite as nice. There's a lot more flexibility and options in the ELT2. Obviously, there's colors associated with that, but also that integration. You can make these things flash with fire alarms. They're capable of being installed in damp locations. They can be installed in weird voltage situations. So if you're doing jobs in Mexico or Canada or overseas where they use maybe 220, 50 hertz, you can do that with an ELT2, but you really can't with an EUG. And then the technology inside is a little bit different. The ELT2 uses a better battery, and because of that, we get twice the standard runtime out of that we do on our EUG. And so there's a little bit of a price difference between these two, but you get a whole lot more for your money when you move to that spec grade product. It's not appropriate for every type application, but it is for a lot of them. The good news is you don't have to remember all of this. I know you're all diligently taking notes out there, but in order to aid you in your memory, we are going to release, as a part of the follow-up to this Chalk Talk, a new architectural brochure. It's going to cover all of this information, some of the distinctions between sort of more traditional products and the spec grade products, but also it will have application images and some ideas about, given this type of installation, what products might be appropriate and why. So you'll have a little bit more information and something that you can go back and reference as a part of the follow-up packet. A lot of stuff already available online. We have lots of pictures. You saw pictures of the ELT2 webpage. We've got pictures of all of the different colors and finishes and combinations there. Our spec sheets go into some detail about the construction of these products and certainly the options that come with them. So go check that out right now. And as always, you're going to get video of me giving the presentation as well as the slides so you can give the presentation yourself. Appreciate you guys being here on a strange day. Tom, Greg, and Matt send their regards. They're all traveling this week, so it's been a little bit of a scheduling nightmare, which is why we're doing this on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. But I certainly appreciate you sticking with me through the turns. If you, oh, Matt Bird is in the chat. Oh my God, he's taking a break so that he could join us today. Thank you, Matt. Anyway, we certainly appreciate everything that you guys do for us, and so if we can do anything to support and assist you guys, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. If you have any questions now, please throw them in the chat. I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, have a good rest of your July for the couple hours that remain, and we'll see you in August.